All right, let's talk Atlanta Falcons. We're in the thick of training camp right now. Exciting time as we get closer to the start of preseason. A lot of momentum behind this Falcon squad. A lot of young players emerging as key contributors, but it looks like there's one guy in particular that the Falcons selected in the 2025 draft that is emerging as the next great superstar, not just on the Atlanta Falcons, but maybe throughout the National Football League. Talked about him after the draft. He's getting more buzz now. Great sign for Atlanta. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Atlanta Falcons made a lot of headlines in the first day of the NFL draft when they selected James Pierce Jr. and, of course, Jalen Walker out of Georgia, Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. But it's what they did in the third round, selecting safety Xavier Watts, that went pretty much unnoticed by a lot of people in terms of the big talking heads in the media. But when you dove into Watts' performance at the collegiate ranks, he looked like a superstar. He looked like a great steal, one of the biggest moves of the year for any team throughout the draft. And now Xavier Watts is doing impressive things in training camp. Obviously, great addition to the Atlanta Falcons. And we've also got some great data highlighting what Watts will bring to this defense now and for the future. First, let's jump into two reports. We got two posts on X or tweets or whatever you want to call it, highlighting what's going on with Watts. From the account, not Bijan and Bijan we trust in Bijan we trust, excuse me. Jesse Bates III, when asked about Falcons rookie safety Xavier Watts and being his role model, quote, he's a hell of a football player. It's going to be nice to be that leader for him. So again, Jesse Bates, obviously a veteran, been around the block a long time. The fact that he's complimentary of Watts, obviously a good sign. And there's another report from at Say Which Way. It's Adnan Akik. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if I'm not. Highlighting a lot of the latest Falcons news coming out of training camp. He reported that Xavier Watts got major run with the starters at safety. Looks like they're alternating days where he and then Jordan Fuller are getting starter reps. So he is an open competition with Fuller to be the starting safety with Jesse Bates. He's already impressed Jesse Bates. I think we're looking at Xavier Watts to be the starting safety and a big time contributor for this Atlanta Falcons defense. And when we talk about this Falcons defense, everyone, like literally every single person in football, looked at the Falcons and said, okay, got to get better at rushing the passer, got to get better at sacks. And that's 100% true. But that wasn't the only thing with the Atlanta Falcons. They had a lot of holes to address, and Xavier Watts does a great job filling up those final pieces to push this Atlanta Falcons defense over the top. So let's get first into Xavier Watts, what he does well compared to his peers specifically from the 2025 draft class. Remember, Watts was a third rounder. We're going to compare him against Malachi Starks, who was a first rounder, and Nick Amonwori, who was a second rounder. Both these guys, Starks, Amonwori, phenomenal football players, first and second round picks to the Ravens and the Seahawks, respectively. Good players. They're already doing good things in training camp. But when you look at the data in front of you right now, comparing Starks, Amonwori, and Xavier Watts, and we're looking at overall grade, according to PFF, that's in blue, run defense, that's in red, and coverage in gold, you can see that Xavier Watts has a better overall grade, has a better coverage grade, and a better run defense grade than Amonwori, and only slightly behind the run defense grade, for Malachi Stark. So he is a complete football player. And when you look at this data, one thing you'll notice, just focusing on the run defense and coverage, is you can see Starks, the difference between the red and the gold run defense and coverage, decent little size there. Same thing with the Nick Amonwori. It's flipped, right? For Amonwori, coverage is higher. For Starks, coverage was lower. But again, a decent little spread there. When you go to Xavier Watts, a much smaller spread. Watts is a much more complete player, much more well-balanced, well-rounded player. And that's exactly what the Atlanta Falcons are looking for when it comes to their defensive backfield and it comes to their entire defense as a whole. Well-roundedness, right? We saw this all the time throughout the National Football League, but we see this really with the Atlanta Falcons. They've been all in on getting better at rushing the passer, but they can't let other attributes of their defense slide. So let's go into our next chart here to highlight what we're talking about specifically. So this is looking at the Falcon statistics last year defensively. The x-axis there is the defensive rush EPA, and the y-axis is the defensive pass EPA. So you can see this is basically correlating how good you were in rush defense and how good you were in pass defense. And you can see the Atlanta Falcons bottom left there, that quadrant, not good, not in a good position to be in, right next to the New York Giants, not a good football team. You can see if you go to the upper right quadrant, you have teams like the Ravens, the Philadelphia Eagles, really good defenses. That's where the Atlanta Falcons want to go. And a lot of teams were in that bottom quadrant, the bad area. What do? They go all into, let's say, get better, use the Falcons example, at rushing the passer to improve their pass defense, right? And they get better in that regard. The problem is they give up some of the run defense game. They go out and get edge rushers to get after the quarterback, and they can't They can't play the run, or they go out and get linebackers or safeties that can blitz and get to the quarterback, but they can't play the run. They're not well-rounded players. The Atlanta Falcons need, in every defense, I'm going to be honest, needs this well-rounded players. You can't sacrifice one attribute for the other, because otherwise you're just trading back and forth and you end up going in circles. You end up not progressing. You need to move up this line here, following the slope of that line. Again, you want to make sure you're improving both your run defense and pass defense at the same time. I know that sounds kind of cliche and obvious. Very few teams get it done. We're looking at a guy in Xavier Watts who's proficient in enough categories, and his spread, his gap in performance, as we saw in the previous chart, between what he does in the coverage game and what he does in the run defense game, fits that to a T. He is a perfectly well-balanced player that can accelerate the Falcons' defensive improvement in both categories, because this is a defense that has some good players. They have some pieces. They've added a lot of really good young guys. We know Jesse Bates on the back end, of course, is a really good safety. I think who's going to be paired with Xavier Watts for at least the next 2 seasons. I look at this defense with the addition of Watts on the back end as being much more complete, being much more well-rounded. That's what Raheem Morris, I think, was really going for. Prior to this season, you notice how, for example, last year he traded for Matthew Judon, strictly a pass rusher. Judon didn't get it done in the pass rush game, and he also still struggled against the run. That's why we see the double weighing effect. Raheem Morris, Terry Fontenot learned from that mistake. They're going after well-balanced players. They did it this offseason. They did it in the draft, and now we're seeing an emerging training camp here. Well-rounded, complete football players, getting more playing time, improving this defense across the board, making sure they're only getting better. They're not, going in circles, getting better in something and getting worse in the other, and end up staying in the same place when you average it all out. The Falcons are improving across the board, and that makes them a dangerous team in the NFC South. All right, Miles, I know you've got a few thoughts on this, but first, Atlanta Falcons fans, in the comment section below, we're talking Xavier Watts, a guy who I think is going to be the rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year when it's all said and done. I am that high on this kid. I think that's what he's going to be. But let me ask you this. Who in Atlanta Falcons history had the best defensive rookie season in team history? There's a lot of names you would go with here, a lot of interesting ways, but let me ask you this. You can only pick one. Which Atlanta Falcons rookie defender had the best rookie season in Falcons history, right? Really think hard about this one. I can think of one or two guys at the top of my head, but I know you guys probably have a better memory than I do, to be totally honest. So give us the answer to that question, the best Falcons rookie defensive season of all time. Put it in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure you go to the description box below and click on the link and sign up for our weekly newsletter, courtesy of the Substack platform. 100% free, doesn't cost you a thing. It's extra content. We got extra links, articles, graphics, statistics, all that kind of good stuff. We also highlight the comment of the week. So if you have a great comment, you may find yourself in there. So make sure you check that out. Again, link in the description box below. But mine's enough from me. Over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest out of Atlanta?
Yeah, like, I think when we talk about Xavier Watts and what this guy brings to the table, we've talked about it all the time. He is a fantastic player. He does a lot of really great stuff. But when I see Watts and what we've been hearing from him, I think this is what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for him to really stand out at camp. And I have another anecdote from someone I would consider to be a really good player on the Falcons. That's none other than Chris Lindstrom, the offensive guard for the Falcons here, saying this rookie class blew my doors off in practice. And people are saying, okay, well, of course, he's talking about Walker, he's talking about Pierce, but he later goes on to clarify. He says Lindstrom's plays didn't just apply to Walker and Pierce. The entire rookie class has come in with the mission, and specifically said safeties Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman Jr. are making early waves with their IQ and physicality in play. So again, love to hear this already. We're hearing defensive guys, Jesse Bates come in here, say that he's doing really, really good. We're saying offensive guys, really great veteran players. I'm thinking, one of the better players in the league right now, coming out and say, this defensive rookie class is blowing my doors off, which is great if it is just Walker and Pierce. You love to hear it. But the fact that he loops in Watts and Billy Bowman Jr. at the end there, you really love to hear that as well. I think Watts is gonna be that guy, like you said. He has all the makings to be a major steal. And the one other thing, just combing through Watts's data, looking at everything that is going on with this guy, there's another thing that really jumps out to me and that I like a lot. When you look at Watts, he was very good all season last year. In fact, he was incredibly good. He had a high point to every game. But the part that jumps out at me that I really like is his most complete game, the game that he played the best at every single asset of when you're talking run defense, overall grade, tackling, pass rush, and coverage. The most complete game across the board was the final game of the season versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. He had 70 plus grades across the board in that game, not one deficient part of his game. I think that really shines that this guy in that moment, when is a championship type of game, when this guy is out on the field, he can live up to the expectations. Notre Dame might not have been able to live up to those expectations, but Xavier Watts surely did. This guy is a special type of player, makes plays in big games, does his best work in big games. So I think they've got a real one here with Xavier Watts. I think he's going to be a superstar for this team in the future. And heck, he may even be a superstar for this team this year. That's how good this guy is. I think we're going to see another star Notre Dame safety in the NFL.
Yeah, and I just had to look at this just to make sure. So the Atlanta Falcons last season finished around middle of the pack, 17th, 18th, excuse me, in interceptions that they forced, right? So you're hoping with the pass rush, with an improved pass rush, they can get more opportunities, but you still have to convert them. You talk about Xavier Watts being a complete football player. This is a guy who had 13 interceptions over the last 2 seasons. That is a bonkers amount in college football, back-to-back All-American. He was one of the best players in the country, both in 2023 and 2024. You brought up in the biggest moments, he played his best, most complete game without a weakness. I look at this kid to just be good analytically, good on the film, and make big plays through interceptions, sacks, turnovers, that whole 9 yards. I think he's the rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year. A lot of people are looking at first round picks, the high marquee guys, Abdul Carter, maybe Travis Hunter, and those guys are good. I think they're going to have great careers and great rookie seasons. But there's something about Xavier Watts in this defense. A lot of young talent. Raheem Morris, smart defensive mind, division where the Falcons are going to be competitive. I think they're the best team in that division, to be totally honest. I think they're better than the Bucks, Panthers, and the Saints. I think they win that division as long as Michael Penix Jr. stays healthy and they don't have, a massive rash of any other injuries. And I think Xavier Watts, when it's all said and done at the end of the 2025 season, we're going to look at him and say, how did he fall to the third round? He was a two-time All-American at Notre Dame, 13 interceptions over his last 2 seasons. His PFF grade's off the charts. His overall scouting report is solid. No real weakness. It was one of these things that happens every year where getting the draft evaluation process, both teams and people in the media, we fall in love with one or two guys that have a really standout skill. Like they run a really fast 40 or have a really fast shuttle or something like that. You're like, oh my goodness. And that elevates them up the draft boards. Xavier Watts has no weakness. He's good at everything, but because he doesn't have a bunch of characteristics, like doesn't have like you're gonna run like a 4.240 or something like that. He doesn't get all the attention. He doesn't get all the buzz. And despite being a great football player, he kept falling and falling and falling. The Falcons getting him in the third round was a massive steal. We talked about it at the time. Now we're seeing him actually perform on the field, impressing veterans, both his safety mate Bates, offensive lineman Lindstrom. Coaches are giving him starter reps. I think he's going to win that starting job outright. I think he's going to beat Jordan Fuller, who, by the way, Fuller last year of his deal with the Atlanta Falcons. I think he will be gone next season. Nothing against him. I just think Watts is that much better. And we're looking at the future of the Falcons defense. It's this young defensive back out of Notre Dame. What a find. What a start. Great potential. And I think he's going to be a star day one for Atlanta.